The Malay Archipelago is our planet's largest and most populous island chain. Located in Southeast Asia and Northwest Oceania, the largest country in this chain is easily Indonesia. Indonesia is home to nearly 300 million people with a land area equivalent to that of Mexico. The 5 largest islands encompassed by Indonesia are Borneo, Sumatra, Java, Sulawesi, and the western half of New Guinea. The eastern half is the nation of Papua New Guinea, which is our planet's most linguistically diverse nation with up to 800 distinct languages being spoken. It also has the most uncounted people of any country, with a population potentially double that shown in official counts. Other countries in this archipelago include Timor-Leste, the Malaysian part of Borneo, Brunei, also on Borneo, and the Philippines. However, something interesting happens when you move from the western side of the island chain to the east. Indonesia is one of our planet's most biodiverse countries with over 300,000 species across the nation. Islands such as Sumatra and Borneo see elephants, tigers, rhinos and orangutans, as well as smaller bear species such as the sun bears, Malaysian tapirs and clouded leopards. On the eastern islands, however, such as Sulawesi and New Guinea, we see tree kangaroos, monitor lizards such as Komodo dragons and cassowaries. There's also marsupials such as bandicoots and birds of paradise, along with cockatoos as other Australian relics. There are no tigers, elephants or orangutans in New Guinea, and there's no evidence they've ever inhabited the region. There's also no evidence that tree kangaroos or cassowaries have ever migrated past New Guinea. This is a phenomenon known as the Wallace Line. The Wallace Line runs through Indonesia with descriptions of the differences in biodiversity dating back over 500 years to 1521. It's not just mammals, but also birds, reptiles and insects, so how is it that Asian and Australasian megafauna made it all the way to this line and never crossed? Well, they could have in theory. During the Pleistocene epoch from 2.6 million to 12,000 years ago, Earth's average temperature was significantly lower than it is today, with the coldest moment coming 20,000 years ago during the last glacial maximum. During this glacial maximum, Earth's average temperature was just 7.5 to 8.8 degrees Celsius, roughly 6 degrees cooler than it is today. However, change wasn't distributed evenly around the world. The equator remained relatively the same, while the poles saw dramatic shifts in weather. In Antarctica, temperatures plunged by 10 degrees, while the Arctic saw a decrease of 14 degrees. Because the poles saw rapid temperature decrease, ice caps greatly expanded. As much as 8% of Earth's surface was covered by ice, with some ice caps reaching 4 kilometers in height. Because so much water was being frozen, Earth's sea level decreased by 125 meters or 410 feet. As a result of this drastically lower sea level, our planet's surface was unrecognizable. Not only was a twelfth of our planet covered in glaciers, but coastlines extended into what is now shallow ocean. Indonesia and Malaysia are perfect examples of this. Until as recently as 6,000 years ago, the islands of Java, Borneo and Sumatra were all connected to the Malay Peninsula. The Gulf of Thailand also didn't exist, meaning a much wider land bridge. This meant animals from mainland Southeast Asia could migrate into the Sunderlands, explaining how Java has rhinos and Borneo has orangutans, animals which otherwise wouldn't reach these locations. The exact same happened in Australasia. The island of New Guinea connected to mainland Australia, with both islands uniting to form the land of Sahul. Sahul spanned from Tasmania in the south all the way to Papua New Guinea in the north. This meant that macropods, cassowaries, cockatoos, canids and echidnas could travel up and down. Some animals from the west, namely monitor lizards, did cross over, but that can be explained by how good of swimmers they are, combined with how short the distance was between Sahul and Sunderland. This also made it easier for early humans from Asia to move south into Sunderland to eventually allow for a divergence of Australia's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people. These people have been in Australia for more than 65,000 years. Along with Homo sapiens, the much lower sea levels allowed for the migration of other human species from Australia, including Homo erectus. At some point, more than 1 million years ago, a population of Homo erectus made it to the island of Flores, and over time they grew smaller to adapt to the smaller living area, eventually evolving into Homo floresiensis, the closest thing we've ever had to a hobbit. Other animals have also begun to experience the consequences of living on islands. For example, Sumatran and Bornean elephants, which migrated to their respective islands as mainland Indian elephants, have begun shrinking in size to adapt to their smaller range. In prehistory, this was even more extreme, with one species of stegodon, Stegodon floresiensis, growing to the size of a racehorse. Sunderland, on the right half of the Wallace Line, was also home to now many extinct animals, such as the Nandong tiger, a polar bear-sized tiger subspecies, Cynomastodon, a four-tusked elephantoid distantly related to modern elephants, and even a hippo, Hexaprotodon. The Wallace Line is one of the many oddities of our planet's natural history. It quite literally separates two biogeographic realms, where on one side we find forest-dwelling giants and on the other we find Australian relics lingering in the treetops. In the centre of the line is Sulawesi, which even 6,000 years ago wasn't closer to one side more than the other, and so species would have to move across it to get from one side to the other. Even today, Sulawesi is home to the Anoa, a pygmy water buffalo, and the Babirusa, suids with bizarre tusks, yet it's also home to marsupials from Oceania such as the cuscus. This makes Sulawesi arguably one of our planet's most unique bridges for biodiversity and a hotspot for evolutionary mingling amongst clades that otherwise wouldn't coexist. What the Wallace Line also highlights is the impact of climate change on the ranges of plants and animals. If the Earth was even colder 100,000 years ago and sea levels fell a further 80 metres, it's entirely possible that elephants and orangutans would inhabit Australia and kangaroos would roam the grasslands of southern Asia. Thank you for listening to this long-form video of mine. I've been struggling to find the subject matter that couldn't just be summarised into a short and that people are actually interested in. I've personally always found the Wallace Line to be fascinating in its evolutionary history, and I've learnt a lot from the research I did on this video. If you want me to make more long-form content, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope to see you in one of my next shorts. Have a great day.